This is an Audio Wool original.
In the skies over Los Angeles, news crews track the helicopter carrying Michael Jackson's body. In death, the king of pop, just as much a figure of fascination as he was in life. Good evening. Good evening.
Welcome to Frightday presents The Truth of Fake News, a series about when the media actually got it wrong and the fallout that followed. This is it, right?
His final tour.
He's hitting the stage for the last time.
Did you ever watch that documentary? I really want to now. I had no interest before.
What was it called?
Oh, This Is It. I thought you were making a joke.
No.
You weren't intentionally making that joke?
No, that was a whoopsie.
Oh, that's kind of amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Well done.
Well.
Yeah, This Is It was his final tour documentary, but that tour was called This Is It.
This is it.
It has to be. I don't know that I can push you any further. At first, you told me that this could only be a one-parter.
I said 45 minutes.
And then
Yeah.
I did 2.
Uh-huh.
And then I said, well, I just have to do 3, and I'm sorry. Tonight we are going to close out with the final 2 accusers of Michael Jackson. And these happen to be the 2 accusers that were put center stage in the 2019 documentary Finding Neverland.
Very prominently featured.
Yeah, you see that, Flickaroo?
I did when it came out.
What were your reactions to it when it came
I
out?
think I mentioned this in the first episode. I was skeptical and indifferent.
Yeah, do you feel like if you watched it again right now, would you feel differently?
I don't know. I think I'd have to watch it.
Okay.
And maybe that's something we should do. It's like a watch party.
Ooh, that would be interesting. Actually, that'd be a good live episode because I could throw out hateful commentary.
It would probably just be a stream, not an episode.
Okay, well, we could do that.
Hateful commentary.
Yeah, I mean about what Dan
Don't
Reed...
fuck with the cable.
Sorry.
Jesus.
I'm like my daughter. Hold on. Just get it back there. Get it out of my hands.
All right.
I just mean about Dan Reed, the director. I think he was fairly dishonest, but we're going to get into that.
Yes, we will.
Byron, so last week we left off with Gutierrez being super creepy. Wanted to follow up with a little bit of detail.
I would love that. And I would like to clarify a little bit, too, about my skeptical position on Gutierrez as well. When I brought up him being a journalist and then having attended an AMBLA conference, the only reason I brought that up is because in my personal work,
you go some creepy places.
I've attended
to get
some events.
The scoop.
Yeah.
Byron, it's funny because that's exactly what I'm going to discuss today was a little bit of information I found. He tried to tell GQ in an interview that he was undercover for the LAPD.
Okay.
As a freelance reporter there. LAPD said absolutely not when they were contacted about it.
Sure.
I mean, I don't necessarily trust the LAPD, so maybe they were lying. But there also was an FBI agent in the 90s who did infiltrate NAMBLA undercover. He said it was incredibly easy to get membership, but to actually go to the conference, you had to be a member for 3 years and had to actually be sponsored by an active member in order to physically attend. I mean, I'm sure because there's quite a bit of threat of physical violence. So if he was attending in an undercover capacity, it would mean he had to have a 3-year long game in order to do it.
Very unlikely that he...
Apparently there's a copy of like the Constitution of NAMBLA floating out there that also specifies these rules about how long you have to be a member before you can attend a conference. Okay. And I knew you would find that, but I really didn't want to fall down that rabbit hole myself. I didn't need that in my search history. It's bad enough as it is. Quick summary, the book he wrote, the quote-unquote diary, was complete bullshit. The people that used him as a source, Diane Diamond was the most well-known one and the one who used him almost exclusively.
Yeah, in the weeks between episode 2 and this one, I've watched a lot of Diane Diamond footage. This was her beat.
It seems the criminal case against Michael Jackson is taking center stage. Our Diane Diamond has the latest.
NBC News analyst Diane Diamond is covering the trial. She's Court TV's executive investigative editor.
An investigative reporter, author of Be Careful Who You Love Inside the Michael Jackson Case. My old colleague Diane Diamond. It's good to see you.
Don't say how old, okay?
My colleague
The other
Diane
day
Diamond.
you said when we first met how many decades ago. You don't need to say that.
She's a familiar name and face to many across the country, but you may recognize big-time reporter Diane Diamond from the grocery store. She is an Albuquerque native.
This was her beat. This was her claim to fame.
All the more reason that she would hang on to the story and kind of lean in that direction.
Even Vanity Fair ran an expose that had Gutierrez as one of the main sources. Gutierrez really was able to, I think, capitalize on how eager everyone was to run sensational stories about Michael.
One person that said something that was really interesting after Michael's death, Martin Bashar, on the air said,
I think all of us were shocked and deeply saddened by the news today. I was actually out running in Central Park when I heard, and came home, showered, and came into the office. Many of us were excited about the prospect of him performing in London. Thousands of people had bought tickets from all over the world, and now to hear this news is very, very sad. I think it's worth remembering that he was probably singly the greatest dancer and musician the world has ever seen. Certainly when I made the documentary, there was a small part of that which contained a controversy concerning his relationship with other young people. But the truth is that he was never convicted of any crime. I never saw any wrongdoing myself. And whilst his lifestyle may have been a bit unorthodox, I don't believe it was criminal. And I think the world has now lost the greatest entertainer it's probably ever known.
Man, would have been nice if he filmed a documentary with that messaging.
That sort of retraction, possibly.
Yeah.
Or
Man.
leaned out of the exploitive.
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
The two accusers that are featured in Finding Neverland, and tonight, Byron, we're actually going to talk about the two accusers. We're also going to talk about the director, Dan Reed, because there's a little bit / a lot that I think needs to be discussed regarding his position and the way he approached this documentary.
Okay.
First accuser is James Safechuck. His story is a little bit easier to review than the other accuser involved in the story. So let's just start with Safechuck.
There were two kind of phases. I see that when you're young, it is this sort of loving, tender relationship and activity. And then when I kind of got into puberty, when he started introducing pornography, and then he started introducing alcohol, the tone changes a bit.
Byron, can you give us just a quick synopsis of who the hell James Safechuck is?
Much like our last accuser, was a friend with Michael Jackson in the 1980s, invited to Neverland to spend time with Jackson as well as members of his family, and that it was an escalation of abuse, starting with presence, spending quality time, to kissing, inappropriate touching, and all of this abuse happened between 1988 and 1992.
Yeah, both of the subjects of this documentary filed lawsuits against Michael Jackson's estate after he passed. And in those complaints, though there were multiple amendments to both of the accusers' complaints as facts continued to change, apparently, but those range of dates, the 88 to 92, when he was between 10 and 14 years old.
Yeah,
that's when he said he was
and
abused.
That was the same with the next accuser as well?
Same age range, yeah. Again, I think that you have to be very delicate when dealing with anybody who comes out with a statement that they have been abused in any way. I also think that out of respect for people who have been abused, you have to be cautiously and respectfully thorough in examining what truth is behind those statements. There's quite a few issues that come up with Safechuck. Many of those issues can be cited when you start looking at differences between his different statements and evidence that he filed in his court case. At the end of the day, I think it's undeniable that he had a fairly tragic background. A person who is healthy and happy doesn't accuse someone of this falsely. And if by chance this did happen to him, that also would be tragic. The court did dismiss his case in 2020. I think that the court doesn't always make the right choices. I can cite many situations where I think our judicial system has failed. But I think looking into the reasons that his case was ultimately dismissed, and in fact, the reasons that people who looked into the documentary Finding Neverland were able to discount much of what was said, those are important things to examine.
Yeah, it is very difficult to prove sexual abuse without eyewitness accounts. I mean, I personally was in a minor sexual assault case. I was part of the jury.
Really?
I was.
What?
A couple of years ago.
Am I just blocking this? How do I not know about this?
I don't know. I probably didn't talk about it because it was kind of upsetting. It was a hung jury.
How old was the girl?
She was like 12 at the time, which it was bad and it was really hard. Those are just very difficult cases to prosecute.
They are very challenging. As much as ideas like Minority Report or brain scanning are terrifying in sci-fi, it's situations like this where I go, gosh, it would be really nice to know beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Pedophiles real quick.
Yeah, you could. It'd be great. It'd be really great. James Safechuck met Michael Jackson while filming the Pepsi commercial.
Mr. Jackson? for me?
Oh, no.
It was a Pepsi commercial in 1986.
He's been a Pepsi guy for a long time. There's a 17-minute compilation of Pepsi commercials featuring Michael Jackson.
You know, many people would say that the injury he sustained on that one horrific...
Of course, when the back of his head lit on fire because of a pyrotechnics accident.
Singer Michael Jackson is back home tonight after suffering burns to his head last night during the filming of a Pepsi TV commercial. Jackson was dismissed from the hospital today against the advice of his doctor.
He has both second and third degree burns of the scalp. Fortunately, the third degree component is relatively small.
Michael's injuries were horrendous. Doctors used balloons to stretch his skin, and honestly, he never fully recovered, and that's when he got hooked on painkillers.
Was equally responsible for his death because that he essentially never was able to get his pain management under control after that, according to people who knew him. Pretty terrifying and sad.
It's not great.
Anyhow, Safechuck was in this commercial with him. He met Michael when he was doing his Australia tour, came and hung out with Michael in actually Los Angeles. This was in 1987. They watched Batteries Not Included.
Welcome to America.
Before it came out, oh, I love it. It's so cute. It's so cute.
Funny, nice robot. Kind of like a robot E.T.
Yeah, it is. It's, to be honest, I think it's kind of better than E.T.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I like E.T.
You know, I have problems with that little guy.
You really don't like how
he
cute
grosses
he is.
me out.
I love him. He's
not
really
a big
cute.
fan.
He's really cute, but that's okay.
More of a robot guy.
And this is one of those situations where Jackson hung out at Safechuck's house as well, like with his family. It was another one of these, okay, it's kind of, you know.
You know, like the pressure you get when someone new enters your home?
Yeah.
Imagine if that person is Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that'd be really weird.
The interesting thing is it seems like he didn't really care about that stuff.
No, and interestingly, James Safechuck says he wasn't really wowed with Michael's celebrity. He wasn't. He was just like a normal dude. He says at the time I was probably more into Voltron and Transformers.
Sure. Well, I mean, what was your favorite band when you were 10? It didn't exist.
It was the Top Gun soundtrack because I think it was the only CD I had.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you wouldn't be terribly impressed by anyone, really.
No. Although Sam was like illegally ordering from those CD.
the
BMG.
BMG.
Yuck. You're not going to play that again.
Excuse me?
Man, you keep playing the same CDs over and over.
Yeah, I should get some new music.
Why don't you join a music club?
Good
idea.
No way.
Music subscriptions.
My parents did the same thing.
Yeah, but he would steal the form and then forge his parents' signature.
Oh.
Order them, and then I think, would never pay.
Your husband's punk rock.
He was a criminal, man.
No, my family was criminals as well.
Man.
Because what was the
You
thing
had
was
to,
you could sign up and then cancel and then sign up again.
It was very weird. It was a little bit
you
like
get like 10
trial
CDs for the price of
subscriptions.
one or something like that.
Yeah. It was like trial subscriptions to, a streaming platform, and you binge watch everything and then you cancel it.
Which is exactly what folks can do right now by going to the FrightdaySociety.org.
Binge it all.
Free 7 days.
Yep.
Sign
listen
up.
to it all.
300
Go on a
pieces of
marathon.
bonus content.
And then never listen to me again.
Yeah, cancel.
Cancel.
Immediately. We deserve it.
I keep wondering if I'm going to get canceled at some point.
Okay, come on.
According to Safechuck, the family started hanging out together. Safechuck began touring with Jackson over his summer breaks. He would dance with Jackson during the song Bad. Jimmy was 10, he says, when he went to Paris with Michael. That's when the abuse began. Honestly, a lot of what they go into in this documentary, I don't even want to go into.
It's pretty explicit.
It's probably an important time to mention this. It's explicit in a way that is oddly avoiding language surrounding victims and perpetrators, but rather the language is almost exclusively lovers and love.
When I wasn't with him, I was always thinking about him. It just feels like the greatest thing when he calls. He'd come over, we'd spend the day shopping and hang out, or he'd spend the night. Or I would go to the hideout in Westwood and spend a few nights there.
And it actually matches a lot of the stories and language and tone of our good pal Gutierrez's diary. It's not the fact that they're talking about alleged abuse, because that does need to be discussed. but it's addressed, in my opinion, in a very hard copy fashion that seems to be looking for sensationalism over any actual concern for true victims of this abuse. I'm not a victim of sexual abuse as a child, and so I can't say this with certainty, but I could imagine myself watching that and feeling very, very uncomfortable with the language surrounding it. It's not as though they're trying to excuse Michael by any stretch, but there's a lot of discussion about both of these boys actually being in love with Michael, finding these physical encounters very pleasant.
So we were like this married couple. And I say married because we had this mock wedding ceremony. We did this in his bedroom. And we filled out some vows. It's like we're bonded forever. It felt good. And the ring is nice. It has a row of diamonds with a gold band. The wedding ring.
It is an uncomfortable approach for me personally.
One of the things that kind of stands out, if Michael was focusing on the childhood that he missed out on, why would he be wasting time having romantic relationships?
Yeah, I think that the romantic relationships that he had, I mean, if we're talking like Lisa Marie Presley or Debbie Rowe, I don't know. I wasn't behind closed doors. I really feel like they were for publicity more than anything else.
I'm talking about relationships with these accusers as well.
Right.
Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Spoiler alert, I don't think he had love relationships with them.
But you see what I'm saying?
I think
like,
he had a bunch of buddies that had water balloon fights together.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say.
SafeChuck claims Michael told him he was his first sexual experience, that SafeChuck was Michael's first. He makes a lot of interesting claims about specifically the locations around Neverland because he knew Michael when Michael purchased Neverland, which was in 1988. The places he claims that Michael assaulted him around Neverland, one of the biggest issues people have taken with his story is that most of these places are very exposed, very much out in the open. The staffing at Neverland, plus the number of people who were wandering around, it really was like a theme park. Michael didn't live there. He had like a 2-floor condo there.
That's right.
But he didn't live there, and there were people there constantly. I was telling you before we started tonight, Ronald and Nancy Reagan would come there. You know, people from all across the spectrum of guests. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that he would be assaulting a child in broad daylight on train platforms or open lofts in buildings where like anybody could find them, it's first of all, it doesn't match anything else that's been said about him. Second of all, it seems insanely unlikely given the number of people who were around there and the amount of publicity that was received that there wouldn't be some evidence somewhere of something like this happening.
I don't know if you've dug too much into this, but this is something that kept popping up when I was editing episode number 2. These pictures of a room that was accessed from Michael's closet.
Oh, are you talking about his panic room?
Is that what they're...
Yeah, it was his panic room
let's talk about this. It's from Splash News, released these stills from the raid from 2003.
Yep.
And the room, which was accessed through the closet...
Is this with like the throne and like...
It's got a staircase with dolls sitting on the stairs up to it, and there's a bedroom with no windows, and there's Peter Pan sheets.
Yep. First of all, this was a room that existed before he bought Neverland.
Okay.
It was already constructed, obviously not used for the same purpose, but it was already there. And this was specifically used as his safe room because there were multiple times when security would inform him like, hey, there's somebody that just broke on to the property. We don't know what the deal is. You need to go get locked up. And he would like hang out in there for hours. He had like music stuff in there. He had like video games in there, like basically
shit, a lot of media.
Yeah, shit to occupy himself when he was in there for long periods of time.
But this is a story in these stills. They called it a shrine of Macaulay Culkin. But it is just the signed press photo of Macaulay Culkin.
Man, that headshot was thrown into all sorts of difficult situations, wasn't it?
Yeah, but in my digging of this safe room specifically, because of course I'm going to look into this stuff, because as I'm editing these episodes, I'm pulling clips to play. And I start seeing these pieces of the story that do kind of make my stomach drop. Is Kelly fucking
Kelly
crazy?
I mean, I might be. Who
Well,
knows?
it's true. I think this is a very great explanation of this. But across multiple platforms for the past 15 years, things like the Daily Mail or Radar have used these stills that are available exclusively through Splash News. But I can't find any of this raid
Any
footage.
verification that it was actually
I can't find
authentic?
anything. I mean, I trust that this video and the stills are real, but there's no context between a frame.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to verify that the actual videos are. I just know the room that you're describing.
The videos are real.
Okay.
But the way they're framing it is that this room is designed to trap kids.
Which none of the kids did that ever happen to, even the ones who accused.
Didn't mention this.
No,
Yeah.
we're never locked up. In fact, in Finding Neverland, the way it's described is when Safechuck says they first started having physical interactions, he was looking forward to it constantly.
Sure.
And this is kind of the stuff that I don't like, that like is very uncomfortable for me. But he says it would happen every day. It sounds sick, but it's kind of like when you're first dating somebody and you do a lot of it.
Okay. Disgusting.
Okay, but
in relation to-
definitely
but I
horrific,
understand what he's saying.
But he's not claiming that he's being locked away in a dungeon.
No. And in this still, next to this shrine of Macaulay Culkin, is also a shrine of Muhammad Ali's boxing glove. It's just memorabilia.
Right. He's just a weird, emotionally stunted human that has a lot of money.
Personally,
and
I'd
a
get
lot
rid
of
of the weird
loneliness.
room. I'd get rid of the weird room.
I don't know. I want secret passageways in my house more than anything else in the
until
world.
you're
Until I'm accused of things like this, and then probably I shouldn't have them. I guess that's true. But
yeah. Sorry for the diversion. I just that popped up.
No, I agree. It's a valid question. And who knows? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe like the safe room story is false. But even if it is, it doesn't fit the narrative of any of the accusers either.
Sure.
It's one of those things that I think people have a very visceral reaction to.
I know I did.
Even though that very visceral reaction is not in any way aligned with even believing the accusers, it's a really powerful thing to call to if you are any part of the media and trying to get people to...
Dolls on a staircase is always going to be
Dolls,
unsettling.
period, are unsettling. I am sorry. Dolls creep me out.
There's a poster above the bed that has, figures. Mona Lisa, George Washington, Abe Lincoln, E.T., Einstein, and Michael Jackson all wearing sunglasses.
Does that not sound like what a 12-year-old boy
1,000%
would pay to have created to hang on their wall?
Yeah.
Anyhow, in the documentary, Safechuck alleges that he was assaulted in many of these public locations. A ton of people who worked on Michael Jackson's estates, who were employees of his, have said there's just no way he could have done that without getting caught.
He probably couldn't have a meal or travel across town without a dozen people.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere he went. Again, we're talking the most famous person on the planet.
Like in many conspiracies, if something so repeated and egregious was happening, someone would have seen something.
I really do believe that that is the case. Part of the court case Safechuck and Robson brought against Michael Jackson's estate, there are a lot of very complicated legal implications here. One of the things that they had to prove, because they had to sue his estate.
Not him.
Not
because
him.
He, at that point,
he was
died.
dead. Yeah, this was well after he died. They had to allege that there was a conspiracy and that other people were involved in procuring children for Michael. So much like Ghislaine
Maxwell.
Much like Ghislaine Maxwell, their complaints implicated people involved with Michael Jackson, his assistant, other individuals, saying that they were helping him run this incredibly complex, essentially child trafficking organization.
That's what it would have to be.
Which, aside from being very difficult for that to be the case without there being further proof, was again not aligned in any way with the accusations that had been leveled against Michael before. You know, of course, I suppose we could consider the possibility that those earlier accusations were false and these were true, or the earlier accusations were true and these were false. Just because one is false doesn't mean that they are all are false. However, I feel like we presented pretty clear explanations for why I don't think the previous ones could have been true.
We did bring up several... Is jilted the correct way to refer to the former employees? That
the only employees that have spoken out against Michael are employees that left under adversarial terms, like because they stole something or because I'm going to go off on like a slight tangent for a minute. I've never been associated with anybody at the level of fame of Michael Jackson. However, I have worked with 3 different families at the level of wealth of Michael Jackson. It's really difficult when you're at that level to have people who you can trust, faithful employees who are not trying to do things to get extra money, trying to find ways to exploit you. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the reasons I say I never, ever, not that it's something I have to worry about, but I would never want to be exceedingly wealthy, because I think that the problems that come with it are horrifically inhumane in many ways, because it becomes almost impossible to tell the difference between somebody exploiting you and somebody wanting to be your friend, and to basically never be able to trust that someone actually is just your friend would be really challenging. And I think Michael had incredible turnover, especially after 1993 when those first accusations came out. Huge turnover in his lawyers, in his assistants, in his accountants,
and the families that he was spending time with.
Exactly, because people kept fucking him over. And it wasn't just a thing to Michael. This is something I've seen repeatedly, and it has this interesting chicken and the egg result, because I've seen in all 3 of those families I've worked with, I've seen the result as maybe excessive paranoia that's going to happen, because you just assume it is.
Who's to say it's excessive after it continues to happen?
When it happens that many times. And I think that there are a lot of people, based on statements and documents I've looked at, that were incredibly exploitive of Michael. I think anytime you're at that level of wealth, it's impossible not to attract that. And when you're somebody who, based on what I have seen, is, for lack of a better term, gullible because of his
a number of things,
very unique life experience, you're going to be even more of a target. And I think that was something that happened to him. So I've seen some people throw out accusations that he was just crazy and paranoid. I don't think that was probably the case. Based on my limited experience, that is what happens when people have extreme wealth. It is really sad and difficult to try and find people who are going to actually have your best interest in mind.
When are you going to get us like our own Soros? I know you know a lot of wealthy people. I'm willing to be bought.
I mean,
I will push a narrative for cash.
You'll push a narrative?
Yeah, and I'll cut this out, of course. There's no way I would accidentally leave this in.
I mean, I don't think any of those 3 ones that I mentioned would be good candidates, but
not even DW.
He's like the Crypt Keeper. He's what, like 174?
He's pretty old, but he's one of the richest people in the world.
He probably is actually drinking adrenochrome daily, I would guess.
Down the street there.
Yeah.
Across town, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, he's very rarely here. That's Safe Chuck in a nutshell. Apparently, Safe Chuck, he has a couple of different stories, but one of his stories is that he didn't realize he was even being abused. Until he saw Wade Robson come out with his accusations in 2013.
Choreographer Wade Robson was one of Michael Jackson's biggest defenders during his 2005 child molestation case, but now he's trying to file a lawsuit against the Jackson estate. And he made some really shocking claims on the Today Show today. Take a look.
Did he perform sexual acts on you? Did he force you to perform sexual acts on him? What was the nature of the abuse?
Yes, exactly what you said. He performed sexual acts on me and forced me to perform sexual acts on him.
How old were you when it started?
7.
And how long did it last?
Till about 14. You know, there's no excuse for what he did to me, and I believe many others, but he was a troubled man, and every effect has its cause. You know, Michael Jackson was, yes, an incredibly talented artist and with an incredible gift. He was many things, and he was also a pedophile and a child sexual abuser.
He says that he's not doing this for money.
Really?
Yeah. I'm just telling you what he says.
He is suing the estate for money. I don't know what that means. I thought it meant he wanted money.
Do you guys think that ruins his credibility if he's asking for money while coming out?
He could be prosecuted for committing perjury, because you know he testified under oath. Yeah. But most attorneys say that probably won't happen because he says this was not repressed memory. He really did remember it all. But now that he has a son and he thinks about it himself, it's all come out, and he feels he has to talk about it. I'm not sure why.
Do you believe him?
Well, he's Michael's not here to defend himself. Yeah. That's the thing.
So I'm going to go with the dead guy.
Wade Robson is a character.
Sure is.
Australian kid. He took dance classes.
Who's good?
Imitating MJ. He was a damn good dancer.
He was like
right?
Lil MJ. They had
He entered a contest in 1987. In connection with the Bad Tour in Australia, he got to meet Michael Jackson with some other winners.
It was like a TV contest, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
His mom was wholly and completely dedicated to her children being rich and famous.
First up is the 8-year-old Brisbane dancer who has impressed everyone from Michael Jackson on down, Wade Robson.
And that can be great if it's supporting your children.
Yeah, I don't know. Even then, I don't think it's great.
My dad had a camera in the mosh pit of all of my concerts.
Okay, that's supporting your passion. That's not supporting you.
My desire. If I told my parents
exploiting
that I
yourself.
want to be a superstar and rich and famous, that would probably be a bad thing. You're right.
You
Okay.
loved music, and your dad was very supportive, and that was maybe the most healthy display of parental support I've ever seen in my life.
He's a good guy.
He's a really good guy. This is not.
We are here with Miss Joy Robson. Yay! In studio.
Thanks for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not know this woman, you are in for a treat today. She is on Facebook.
The one thing I will say about dance is I'm so grateful that my children have been involved in dance since they were very, very young. They have had the most amazing life, the most amazing friends. They have lifelong friends. They've always been busy, and I think boredom breeds trouble.
Right. I agree with that,
So
especially here in this city.
In any city. I mean, even in Australia, I found the same thing. My kids worked every weekend, every school vacation. Their birthday parties were backstage. Their Christmas parties were backstage. No regrets.
After this contest, where he got to meet Michael with the other winners, the mom saw this as an opportunity and delivered a thank you note to Michael Jackson at his hotel. Michael Jackson invited them to his room. So again, it's very, very important. This is nothing that Michael initiated.
Even according to their account.
Even according to their account.
Yeah.
Yes. The mom then sent letters and videos for 3 years to Michael, trying to get a response. Got no response. In 1990, she traveled to California with Wade, his sister, and grandparents. They were all going to go on a family trip to Disney for a dance performance with his dance school. Okay. So in 1990, they go there and the mom says, okay, like I know Michael hasn't been responding, but I'm doubling down. She made tons of phone calls, finally got in touch with Michael's assistant, Norma, who let them meet Michael again at the recording studio. At that, Michael invited them all to come to Neverland. Okay.
Which he's done with a lot of people.
Right. So this is after 3 years of persistent pursuit by the mother of Michael. Michael invites the whole family to Neverland. After the family returns to Australia, they stayed in touch. 4 months later, Joy and Wade came back to the U.S. for an LA Gear photo shoot with other kids.
LA Gear.
LA Gear, you remember LA Gear?
LA Gears when I won Double Dare.
You won Double Dare?
I wasn't on Double Dare.
I was on one of those that
You were.
I got slimed.
Okay.
Or Leslie got slimed.
Figure It Out, your sister.
It wasn't Figure It Out. Anyhow.
Great stuff. Very desirable as a child.
Yeah, I completely agree. At this LA Gear photo shoot, there were other kids. One of those kids, and this is important, Byron, put a pin in this, was Michael's niece, Brandy. Wade had a little crush.
Cute.
He asked Michael to get them in contact with each other.
Sure.
He had a crush. They came back the following year for 1 week at Neverland. And this is the point at which the mom decides, okay, Wade and Chantel, her daughter that's older than Wade, they've kind of gone as far as they can go on their journey to celebrity. In Australia, it's time to move to LA. So in September of 1991, she packs up the 2 kids. She has another son who's in college at the time. He stays there, moves the 2 kids to LA. According to them, even, they didn't have a lot of contact with Michael. Michael helped sponsor them for the immigration so that they could come here, right? Because they were immigrating from Australia.
Yeah.
But they don't see a lot of him. Wade and Chantel both have trouble getting work. They're like trying to make a go of it in LA, but it's real hard. The mom starts begging MJ to put Wade in his videos. And in fact, Michael gives them a $10,000 loan because things aren't going well. And
it's tough making it
It's
in
tough.
LA. Yeah.
Wade's mom even explains in one of her depositions that she went for 6 months without talking to Michael because she was upset that he hadn't called Wade from the Dangerous tour. She thought that Wade was owed a phone call while he was on that tour, and Michael never made that phone call. So she didn't talk to Michael for 6 months. There are a lot of people expecting a lot of things from Michael, I don't know if this ever happens to you, Byron, but I am not wildly popular, but I have enough friends that sometimes I overcommit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I will realize, like, oh my gosh, it's been like 2 weeks since I talked to this friend. Wow, that sucks. I'm a shitty person.
Let's go to my unread 20.
20 unread
text messages, which are just texts that I've seen that
You're like, I need to return to, but I haven't had time.
Exactly.
Put a pin in it.
Happens often.
Yeah.
And we have minimally public lives too. Like,
right. Oh my gosh, yeah. So this mother who was sponsored to come to the States by Michael, got a loan from Michael. Michael has, at her begging, put her kid into 3 music videos, is now pissed. Wade's career eventually did take off. He actually began choreographing NSYNC and Britney Spears. This is in like the heyday.
Yeah.
B.
Wade, he's already wrote the concept for the whole tour, and I'm starting tour rehearsals right now. It's crazy.
Is it fun working with Wade Robson?
Oh my God. Yeah, this will be the 3rd tour that we've done together.
Now, he also does all the choreography for NSYNC, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So,
actually, they switch up on choreographers.
Oh, okay.
I really use Wade most of the time. Yeah.
In fact, this is one of my favorite stories about Wade. He claims the Justin Timberlake song Cry Me a River about B. Spears cheating was the story of him hooking up with B. Spears while she was still dating JT. Like, there's no question about him being a very talented dancer and choreographer. Okay, I'm not going to deny that for a minute. The Britney Spears thing I do find hilarious.
it's especially weird. I'm reading a quote from her when he was initially hired to choreograph her tour. She said, he's a friggin' baby.
But he was a little baby, but he was really good.
Yeah.
And very confident, very sure of himself, and very much in love with dancing.
And very entitled.
One of the podcasts that was a source for my investigation into this is called the Michael Jackson Case for Innocence podcast.
Okay.
I have to give credit where credit is due.
Are you sure you want to go down this road right now?
I do. I
Okay.
think it's really important. This woman who was is a mother and was freaked out about her daughter liking Michael Jackson, decided to dig into whether Michael Jackson was actually guilty or not, did a ton of research, has beautiful, wonderful citations, given a lot of road mapping to anyone who wants to investigate this further.
Mm-hmm.
Did a really good job. Very difficult to listen to.
Okay.
I mean, I am not.
Well, imagine how difficult this would be listened to if I wasn't over here.
It's very true.
Tip-tapping.
But all of that said, most of what she presents as evidence I find to be very helpful. There are areas that she dips into that become fairly opinion-based, and the most repeated one that I took issue with, she kept saying, this seems like evidence of a sense of entitlement, a sense of entitlement, a sense of entitlement. And I'm like, yeah, it does. But I'm sorry, there are a lot of entitled assholes in this world. Most of them aren't going around accusing people falsely of molestation. Like, associating somebody being entitled with evidence for them filing false claims isn't a great continuous argument to make.
Because there's larger problems that would...
Right. It's not because they're entitled.
It's a symptom more than a...
Right. It's a much deeper rooted issue than that. And I do not like entitlement. Entitlement drives me crazy.
Triggers me quite a bit, honestly.
But it's not evidence that somebody is falsely accusing someone of rape. And that's one of those things that just itches at me every time I listen to that. So I do feel like it's important to point that out. And since you said entitlement, Wade was a very entitled person, and that came through
parents constantly
his upbringing.
Telling him he is going to be a star.
Right, he was the king of the castle.
Yeah.
Wade testified to Michael's innocence in the Chandler case.
Second family claiming to be friends with the entertainer was introduced to CNN late Thursday by an associate of Jackson's. Joy Robson and her 2 children say they frequently stayed at Jackson's Santa Barbara County ranch, and that 10-year-old Wade had slumber parties with Jackson, sleeping with him in the same bed.
Yeah, there's been different times where it'll just be me and Michael. Then there'll be other times where he has other friends over too. That's what Brett said, it's just a slumber party. We just have a lot of fun.
Testified again to his innocence in the 2005 criminal trial with the Arvizos.
What's he like? He's a good guy.
He's a good guy?
Yeah.
Show me where he touched you. Nothing ever like that? No nonsense, no shenanigans? But he's a weird guy, you have to admit, right?
You know what? At the end of the day, it's like everybody's got something weird about him. Everybody's got something strange about him.
Yeah, but some people more than others.
Yeah. True. At the end of the day, all I'm here, it's like, you may not like, you may have weird thoughts about him.
At the end of the day.
Why don't you let me talk for a minute? No. But it's like, as long as people don't forget, how talented he is and what he's done for the music industry. Think whatever you want about him, but you can't deny his talent. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, but you can notice the 35 plastic surgeries and the weird assortment of boys in his bed.
Wade gets married, has a son, makes movies with his wife. Michael dies. Wade goes to the funeral, writes this beautiful tribute, performs with Janet to honor Michael.
Yeah.
Then starts having some issues. As somebody with mental health issues, I by no means want to say that a mental health issue indicates that you are more prone to false accusations, nor do I want to indicate that because a parent has a mental health issue, their child necessarily has that mental health issue. I do think it is important context that Wade's father passed away. He had bipolar disorder and he did die by suicide. He also had a very, very stressful upbringing, even though he was dancing and doing something he loved. Again, calling to the interview with Joy, she very freely talks about her kids not really having a childhood. They were constantly working. Whether it was that, mental health issues that he had genetically, a combination, he eventually started encountering some serious issues. And in 2011, he had a breakdown and dropped out of kind of the first big film directing project that he had. He goes to a psychiatrist at that time, does not mention the abuse, but does give extensive mention to the long-term pressure from his mother. Again, he and his sister and all of the work they did and, the pressure of being in the entertainment industry. I don't know anybody who has ever said otherwise. It is not a low-key, chill industry to try and exist in. At this point, there is a Michael Jackson Cirque du Soleil show that is being created. And he applies to be the choreographer for that show. He thinks he's uniquely qualified. Very well could be. He's a very talented choreographer. The estate does not hire him.
It's kind of fucked up. I mean, he's good.
It is, but I mean, he might not be the best.
He might not be.
Also, different kinds of dance.
Well, I mean, he was a little Mike.
Yeah, but there were, I think, 50 other little Mikes that won that contest.
That's true. This is decades in between.
He has another breakdown. This is in 2012 now. And this time...
Yeah, I'm a father, and I became a father 2.5 years ago to this beautiful baby boy. And during the first 18 months of his life, I collapsed into 2 nervous breakdowns, terrifying nervous breakdowns. At that point, I had no idea what was wrong with me, what was going on. During the second one, this thing happened where I started looking at him and imagining him being a victim of the sexual abuse that I was at the hands of Michael. And for the first time in my life, I began to realize that my completely numb and unexplored feelings in relationship to what Michael did to me might be a problem, and maybe I needed to speak to someone about it.
When he goes to the psychiatrist, he alleges the abuse from Michael. This is the first time it's ever been mentioned. He's talked to psychiatrists, testified twice.
I mean, repressed memories are real.
You always say they aren't when I'm talking about aliens, Byron. That's not very fair.
First of all, one thing I want to clear up is that this is not a case of repressed memory in any
It's
way.
been reported in the press some.
I never forgot one moment of what Michael did to me.
Well, what do you think the odds are that he thinks it happened versus it actually happening?
Interesting question. I don't think they're high.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 3 options here. That it happened, it didn't happen, and he's lying, or it didn't happen and he thinks it did.
Right. I agree. Totally 3 different options. And I'm not going to rule any of them out.
Yeah.
But I will say, based on some other information, it would be hard for me to believe this was something he believed to be true.
Sure.
So in 2013, kind of between late 2012 and a big chunk of 2013, he tries to sell a book about his abuse at the hands of Michael. He doesn't go to the authorities.
Well, at that point, the statute of limitations is probably expired, right? Okay.
Just wait for this. Yeah. Tries to sell a book about it, is unsuccessful. So in 2013, he files a lawsuit against Michael's estate and publicly announces these allegations of abuse. As I said, in this suit, he has to claim that Jackson's companies were guilty in addition to just Michael himself, and that there was this huge, crazy operation. The way in which he does this is so patently dishonest that I don't think it could be him thinking something happened that didn't. Here are some examples of that. He claimed that Michael and his organization organized all of these meet and greets. However, the meet and greets from the bad tours were actually run by Target. Even Wade's own mother testified to that in the 2005 trial. In depositions for Wade's own lawsuit, which were taken in 2016, the mom testified that the other meet and greets were organized by CBS, Target, and Pepsi. There was no evidence of this elaborate grooming operation. It seems wildly coincidental that the first accusation of that would emerge when it was suddenly a requisite piece of the case in order to overcome the statute of limitations.
Sure. Okay.
Like that seems pretty bananas.
Do you know much about this book that wasn't sold?
I don't. You got info about it?
Well, I just kind of scrolling through something. Sections from another book, a book called Conversations with a Pedophile, that it appears that he pulled plot lines, dialogue directly from, and replaced the character of Alan with Michael Jackson.
Well, there you go.
But I don't know. That's just me scrolling through a thread.
Interesting. Maybe, record another jump in about that. Fuck. Because I love that.
I don't want
That sounds great.
All right.
Robson is basically alleging that the assistant is the equivalent of Ghislaine.
Yeah.
However, if you recall, even the mother talked about pursuing the hell out of the assistant to beg for meetings with Michael. Not exactly...
That doesn't necessarily matter. If the mom didn't know that sexual abuse was happening...
Oh, no. What he's alleging in the suit is specifically that the assistant was...
pursuing him.
Was pursuing all sorts of children and creating,
I see what you're
like Ghislaine, creating a grooming operation and meet and greets for Michael so that he could abuse kids.
So you're implying that she wouldn't have needed to be so persistently pursued.
Well, yeah, if that was the case, one phone call to this lady...
What if Wade wasn't his type? It's gross.
Well, according to Wade, Wade was his type.
Right.
So I don't know. It was already well on record that the multiple opportunities that Michael had to pursue Wade in any way were completely ignored. Mm-hmm. That when Michael finally developed a closer connection with Wade and his family, it was at the absolute insistence of Wade's mother. Nothing to do with an assistant orchestrating anything. The complaint also alleges that the immigration sponsorship from Australia was because of the abuse, that Michael wanted him closer so he could abuse him. However, the mother testified and has spoken about in countless interviews that she moved for Wade's career and that they barely saw Michael when they got to the States, and in fact was pissed about that because they wanted more networking support from Michael, essentially. Again, the mother even retestified to those same details in 2016 in the deposition for her own son's civil lawsuit. He also claimed in this complaint that Michael threatened him, that he was abused hundreds and hundreds of times between 7 and 14 years, every time they were together. But the timeline of overnights in those years, per Wade and per his mother, they weren't alone many times at all in those years. So those accusations couldn't possibly be accurate. Mm-hmm. Like there's just no way. In 2005, when the Chandler allegations were made, a lot of kids were surprised with interviews. Basically, police, lawyers would depose and show up and interview kids. These interviews were controversial because they were very high pressure. Many cases they were without any warning, without any notice, very much off the cuff. He categorically denied that anything ever happened. The language and tone of those interviews was very similar to what you heard in the Jimmy Kimmel clip. In 2005, National Enquirer asked Wade's mom to say that Jackson molested Wade in exchange for a 6-figure payment.
And that's from an account by Jermaine Jackson.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I feel like there's got to be more
Some
somewhere.
Substantiation.
Yeah, but regardless, if there was truth to that, it seems crazy that she wouldn't have capitalized on that at that point.
Well, and it wasn't just the National Enquirer, too. Victor Gutierrez is supposedly reaching out to not
creepy
only...
motherfucker.
Apparently reaching out to a bunch of different people.
So many.
A lot of different families and kids, trying to get them to say stuff about Michael Jackson. Like we talked about last week. Just a handful, small handful. Yeah.
Wade was not forced to testify in 2005. In fact, he offered to. He signed an on-call agreement. Here's a clip of Michael Jackson's lawyer talking about why Robson was such a strong witness.
I believe in the experience that I had with one of the accusers. I interviewed Wade Robson for hours before he testified. I interviewed his mother and daughter before they testified. I called all three as witnesses. They were among the most powerful witnesses in support of Michael Jackson. Mr. Robson was a very articulate, likable, intelligent, seemed like a nice person. He was adamant that Michael Jackson had never done anything improper towards him at any time. The mother and sister backed him up. They had traveled with Wade and Michael Jackson. They had slept in Michael Jackson's bed. They said nothing improper ever happened. And they were so strongly in favor of Michael Jackson and so strongly against the prosecution of Michael Jackson that I made them all star witnesses for the defense.
So at this point, in the mid to late 20-teens, the lawsuits that both Safechuck and Robson had filed against Michael's estate were looking weaker and weaker. Many amended complaints, lots of changes in stories. And this is when Dan Reed comes along with the idea of a documentary. Byron, I know I'm springing this on you a little bit.
No, I know a little bit about Dan.
Yeah, you want to give me a little bit of, you want to give us a little bit of background on Dan Reed?
British filmmaker. He's done a couple things that I've seen. Worked with Frontline on PBS, documentaries on stuff that I really am interested in. The Charlie Hebdo attacks. Remember when that French the newspaper published the image of Mohammed, and then there was a terrorist attack in the office.
Yes.
Seemingly great work. And honestly, well, he was just the executive producer, but there was a 4 Hours at the Capitol documentary that came out on HBO that I really enjoyed as well about the January 6th stuff. But something that jumps out to me is a 2014 documentary called The Pedophile Hunter.
Stenson Hunter and his team bait suspected pedophiles online.
Set up a profile, put a girl up that obviously looks underage.
They turn up to what they think is a child for the purposes of sex.
Is he, everyone ready?
Yeah. You whack a video up, he can't hide from it. Everyone in his family's going to know what he's about. They've done wrong, but it's not for me to beat them up. It's not for me to punish them. I'm just the guy that held the mirror up.
A startling insight into a new kind of vigilante.
Try something to do this day, please, sir. Sir, I suggest you stop and talk. Your information is going to be handed in to the police, uploaded to the internet.
The Pedophile Hunter, tonight at 10 on 4.
Which is a British vignette that was named Best Documentary on a Contemporary Theme at the 42nd British Documentary Awards.
Who was the pedophile hunter? Was it Gutierrez?
His name was Stenson Hunter.
Okay.
Kind of intriguing. Other than that, I don't know much about Dan.
Weird coincidence. Couldn't find any evidence there's something behind this, but the armorer on the set of Rust that almost got Baldwin put away for negligent homicide, though maybe the news of that is wrong. I should probably look into that more too.
Well,
I just love myself and Alec Baldwin so much.
Turns out you were right. He didn't pull the trigger.
Do you know what her name was?
Hannah Gutierrez Reed.
Yeah.
Let's wait for that. Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, Hannah Gutierrez Reed. So, Byron, I'm going to need you to do some identity investigation to see
I'll dig into it.
Maybe she is married to Dan Reed and the daughter of Gutierrez, or the daughter of Dan Reed and married to Gutierrez, or maybe married to the son or daughter of Gutierrez.
I'll look
okay.
into it.
All right, look into it. See what you can find. I hate to say this, but when it comes to Leaving Neverland, Dan's a real shitty documentarian.
He sure got a lot of folks' attention, though.
Well, I'm going to give you some quotes here, and then we're going to go into why I think he's a shitty documentarian. Here's some quotes that Dan gave about the movie. I read a lot of the witness statements there and spoke to a lot of the investigators, and I didn't find anything that contradicted or cast any doubt whatsoever on Wade and James' accounts.
That's bad documentarian already.
Yep. Oh, it gets way worse. I certainly didn't want to stake any reputation on a story that didn't have a strong factual basis or that wasn't true. Okay. So I did look, throughout the 2 years of making the film, I looked for anything that could cast doubt or undermine Wade and James' story. I found nothing at all. I found their stories to be very, very consistent. I found their family stories to be consistent with what they had told me. That seems impossible to be true.
I'm an amateur documentarian, and I know that you don't go into a story like this with that firm of an idea.
You just don't. Well, one of the things the whole documentary uses as evidence these stories must be true. They claim that Wade and James had not had any contact to align their stories, yet what they talk about is so remarkably similar that it must be true. An interviewer from Rolling Stone says to Dan Reed, "For legal reasons, Wade and James were kept apart long before you even approached them about making the movie. That's fascinating." Here's what Reed said. "Yeah, so they couldn't exchange stories. Sundance was the first time as adults that they'd met. It's the first time they've had any significant time together. Here's a quote from Wade Robson's 2016 deposition.
Oh, no.
When was the last time you spoke to James Safechuck? I believe the last time we spoke would have been sometime in early 2014. What did you talk about? Objection, blah, 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 blah. Then it's
redacted.
Right.
Yeah.
They clearly
Seems
have.
like.
So had he read the court documents, he would know that that story was wrong. Significant, but not enough in and of itself. Oh, let's keep going. So remember Michael Jackson's niece, Brandy?
Yeah. They dated for quite some time.
7 years.
Yep.
Dan Reed very deliberately left that entirely out of the documentary. No mention of it. No mention of Brandy.
I don't know what that has to do with the documentary, though.
Basically, anybody that would have given anything other than that very single narrative, which I will continue to poke holes in, he just completely ignored. So that's not a documentary.
And Brandy, to this day, does support the idea that her uncle was not an abuser.
Correct. If this is about Wade Robson, and specifically Wade Robson and Michael Jackson, you would think that the story of him
dating Michael's niece is...
Yeah, which he started dating, according to him, towards the end of the abuse he was experiencing with Michael.
Sure.
If he had been abused horrifically and was traumatized by this abuse with Michael, why would he date his niece and be forced to see him constantly? That seems weird.
Which, again, he didn't see him constantly either.
Correct. But
having that be part of his life.
Right.
I think that's interesting. That isn't necessarily evidence that would lead me to think.
No, absolutely it's not.
Anything definitive.
But the idea that Michael brought them together and helped, you got a crush on my niece? Like, why the fuck would he do that if he's trying to separate Wade from all other possible romantic interests? And the way that Wade describes it is trying to keep him all to himself. Like, that those are very inconsistent things. Here's what Brandy says, referencing Wade's description in Leaving Neverland. Wade was not describing my uncle. He was describing a totally different person, but not my uncle. And that's why this is a narrative that has changed over the last 15 years. Everything that he's ever said about my uncle is the complete opposite of who he was painting in this documentary. Now, she could be totally wrong, but again, like, why would you just completely leave that out if you're actually purporting to...
She could also have a compartmentalized idea of who her uncle is.
Completely. But why would you, like, absolutely ignore that in a documentary? Like, why would you know...
You only have 3 to 4 hours. It's hard because, like, I'm discovering this as I go.
Had a lot of time to give borderline child porn descriptions.
That's accurate.
Probably could have saved 30 seconds to give
Brandy
a single perspective other than this one.
That's true.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff that he's either directed or produced are like events, like 9/11 or the Grenfell fire in London. They're not difficult stories to tell because they're factual.
It's very cut and dry.
Yeah.
Or at least much more so.
Yeah. And I think that from his quote himself, that was kind of how he approached this.
Not a great idea.
You know what he's working on next?
Oh, God, what?
I don't know what this says to you, but he's an executive producer on a project called Infamous, in parentheses, Andrew Tate.
Even fucking idiots get it right once in a while. Just watch now, it's going to be a defense of Andrew Tate. So, Byron, I hear what you're saying, and you're making some good arguments, and I do appreciate that you were, how would Lex put it, you're steel manning the case?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can steel man this. If you remember one of...
Wait, how do you choreograph an animated film? Robson did Happy Feet too.
Are you kidding me? Do you know the choreography in that is huge? Have you seen that movie?
It's a cartoon.
It's green screen choreography, and then they have to, like, animate it to match.
They use the little balls.
Do you have any idea what kind of dancing was in that? I would love to emulate that dancing right now.
I guess it is called Happy Feet. It's a
I could
movie
sing
about...
songs.
Nah,
oh my gosh.
Let's not.
Oh, that makes me really sad
All
because
right.
what's her name was in that?
Okay.
The one that died.
Don't know.
Yeah, Brittany Murphy.
Oh no.
Yeah. In the complaint that Robson filed, an essential component was that he was no longer able to work at all because of the abuse, starting in 2012 when he had that second breakdown. Okay, here's a quote from the complaint that was filed with the court. As a direct and proximate result of Jackson's company's failure to protect Robson from Michael Jackson's acts of childhood sexual abuse, rather than continue on his career path and become an international superstar, Robson now only associates the entertainment industry with the psychological injury, illness, and damage resulting from the Jackson Company's despicable conduct. Robson has been unable to work and has been forced to decline many prestigious and lucrative job offers, such as directing the opening number for the Academy Awards, major worldwide tours for major recording artists, and various...
the film Step It Up Revolution.
Ooh.
Dropped out.
Yeah, it was a big hit. And various stage and stadium concert productions for other superstars. In addition, Robson is unable to continue writing songs or producing music, as well as being unable to continue performing and directing in any manner or capacity whatsoever. Well, here's what's funny about this, Byron. This complaint was originally filed in 2013.
Sure.
When the fourth amended complaint with some of that exact wording was filed in September of 2016, he was in that very couple week time frame posting on Facebook about a music video he was filming the next week. Get your name tattooed with some dude named Blake McGrath. I have no idea. I only know Mark. I don't know Blake.
It's a Canadian dancer, pop singer,
There
actor,
we go.
model, a choreographer.
There we go. There were also tons of posts on his Facebook page from 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016 about all sorts of jobs, short films, music videos, dance instructional experiences. He was very clearly working a lot. The case was ongoing.
Yeah.
It started in 2013.
Okay.
And he kept amending the complaint.
Sure.
But the claim was that starting in 2012,
he was unable to work
in any manner or capacity whatsoever. That's the wording from the complaint. And that complaint was reasserted
3 years later.
3 years later.
Yeah.
During this entire duration, and really without any pause, he has consistently worked.
Which, I mean, people need to work to survive, but
Right, but
his claim is that he was unable to do
unable to
that.
work at all.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's why he's seeking absurd amounts of money, because he can't work because of what Michael did. He can't handle the trauma of working in the entertainment industry. And yet, not only is he still working, but he's working exclusively in the industry. And holy shit, is he happy. There's a video of him teaching dances to his son. It is the opposite. I'm not saying that a person can't do that and have been abused.
Yes.
I'm saying that he's lying in his complaint, and that doesn't bode well for his story overall.
Did it work for him?
Oh no, it was completely denied.
Well, there's a new twist in the allegations against the late Michael Jackson after a judge dismissed a lawsuit claiming the singer's two companies, MJJ Productions and MJJ Ventures, had a legal obligation to protect young boys from sexual assault.
Yeah, he keeps appealing. He'll just keep appealing forever, I think. But perhaps the most egregious piece of horrifically negligent documentarian work on Dan Reed's part actually comes with Safe Chuck's story. We already talked a little bit about how Safe Chuck said that he was assaulted in all of these areas that were pretty open and would be very difficult for them not to get caught. Well, he also claimed that he was assaulted many times in the train station at Neverland. Okay.
At a fucking train station?
So it looks like, if you look at pictures of it, it looks a little bit like the Disney World or Disneyland train station. Very similar vibe. It's 2 stories. And he tells really graphic stories in the show about being assaulted there.
At the train station, there's a room upstairs. And we would have sex up there too. Would happen every day. It sounds sick, but it's kind of like when you're first dating somebody, right? You do a lot of it. So it was very much like that.
Well, slight problem. If you remember, Safe Chuck was assaulted between 88 and 92 when he was 10 to 14 years old.
It didn't exist then, did it?
No, it wasn't. The permits weren't filed for it until 93. And some people, no, hold on. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, you know,
I know what you're going to say, because
my suit of armor here.
Certainly this would not be the first time that a rich person put the building cart before the permit horse.
I just heard so much about how Elon Musk wanted to
fuck that guy.
turn the HQ into hotel rooms for the employees that stayed.
God, he's a fucking psychopath.
And then when people were like, you can't just add locking doors inside a building.
That, like, fire codes, etc. Yeah. Okay, however, there's an aerial photo from August of 1993 that very clearly shows.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
And it'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, so in order for that part of Safe Chuck's story to be true, the rest of his story about Michael losing interest when he turned 14 would have to be false, because he would have had to be at least 16 then. And it was 2 years after the story that he's reporting, which doesn't align for all sorts of other reasons. Another kind of interesting piece, it's a little bit heavy with legal mumbo jumbo, but hang with me here. So there are two different narratives here. One of them is Safe Chuck told his mom in 2005 Michael Jackson abused him, that Michael Jackson was a bad guy. This appears in some court documents. It also appears in part of his testimony in the show or in the movie Finding Neverland.
Well, it's two-part.
Or Leaving Neverland. I keep saying that. Finding Neverland is the Johnny Depp one about James Barrie, the guy who wrote Peter Pan. You ever seen that one?
I don't
different
have
story.
much of an interest in that.
That's all right. That's okay. We'll talk about Johnny Depp and his exoneration in another episode.
Fuck.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm just kidding. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's story A. Story B is both Wade and Safe Chuck didn't realize that this was abuse until 2012, 2013. The logical reason for this difference is this thing called equitable estoppel. I knew that my semester of law school that created massive debt would finally pay off someday.
Huge debt. You relocated across the country.
I did, and then back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hot tip, everyone. If you want to build good credit, go into mass amounts of debt, live in your parents' basement, pay it all off in like 6 months, and then you have a killer credit score.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not the plan. This is why I talk about being a remarkably lucky human. Equitable estoppel is a way that you get around statute of limitations with a 4-prong proof that essentially you were stopped from filing the case within the statute of limitations. And it's like really riddled with legal jargon.
A lot of people are using COVID as an example of an estoppel.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I mean, I could see that being a pretty viable one.
Yeah.
These guys are saying that Michael made them afraid of filing because this was something that they were going to get in trouble for too, made them feel like they couldn't file it, made them feel like this wasn't something that they actually could hold against him. It was this multi-pronged piece, okay?
Sure.
But in order for that to be the case, they're trying to prove, specifically with Safe Chuck, that Jackson knew what he was doing was wrong, and by convincing Safe Chuck to lie about the nature of their relationship and misleading him to believe that he being Safe Chuck, was a willing participant, Jackson engaged in conduct on which Safe Chuck was expected to act. In other words, he talked Safe Chuck into not reporting the case, and Safe Chuck was unaware of the fact that this was a non-consensual relationship. He didn't realize the harm that it caused him until he sought therapy as an adult, and Safe Chuck relied to his detriment on Jackson's conduct by continuing to not deny that he had been the victim until after the statute had expired. It's
such a tough thing to establish.
It's Gumby.
Yeah.
It's like crazy hard. But that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's a good way to keep the efforts going, I
Clearly
guess.
it wasn't successful. These cases have been dismissed. I think Robson's has been dismissed 4 times now.
Sure.
It's not a solid argument, especially when you have in writing within your own case. Safe Chuck has some documents in his filing that say he told his mom about the abuse in 2005, and other documents in his same case filings. He wasn't even aware it was abuse until 2013. Like,
Sure.
Clearly the two can't both be true.
Well, and then there's Wade Robson testifying in one case in front of a jury that Michael Jackson is not an abuser.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people don't lie under oath, especially if they are afraid.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. This documentary, in a nutshell, Byron, was a very dishonest narrative, down to the victims burning gifts that they said Michael had given them. Do you remember that part in the documentary? This was supposed to be like the triumphant, like, I'm going to get back at them. So this is over the end credits. Wade Robson is burning. The idea is that it is the glove, bedazzled, fancy Michael Jackson famous glove.
Yeah.
And his Thriller red leather jacket.
Well, I guess it's probably potentially a little bit more significant.
That Michael gave him.
If it was the original. How many do you think Michael had?
Well, here's what's interesting. Dan Reed was asked very specifically whether that was the real jacket, because like that statement is meaningful in a lot of ways, Byron. It means that he isn't just after money, because clearly you could sell that for so much fucking money, right?
Yes.
Burning that is like this big statement that, see, like, this is about overcoming this trauma. This is not about me getting money. And when Dan Reed was asked about it, he said, well, yeah, I assume, of course, it was the real thing. Okay, how would you not know for sure? And then he doubled down and said, yes, it definitely was. And then Robson came out and clarified that it was actually just a replica that Michael had given him, therefore worth absolutely nothing, making basically no statement because there was nothing substantial other than like a cinematic moment. And honestly, this really drives home Dan Reed's shitty Diane Diamond style reporting.
I mean, it was a 1 in 1,000 collector's edition replica, but
right.
It wasn't the original thing.
Little different. Do you see what any of those are going for on eBay versus what like actual original Michael memorabilia?
But it looks like Robson did actually sell some of Michael Jackson's other stuff earlier.
Yeah.
His fedora from a Smooth Criminal music video.
To get money.
Yeah. Yeah. It does look
yeah.
like that.
And that doesn't prove that he's lying.
No.
But it certainly isn't a statement about, look, this isn't about money.
Yeah.
So, Byron, Michael Jackson was a complicated, interesting human being. I've spent a lot of time watching footage of him in the last few weeks. As a mom, one of the most compelling and moving pieces of video I saw, which by no means proves his innocence, okay, I just want to be very clear about this, is a video of him playing with his kids. And it's this silly little clip of him helping his kids pick up puzzle pieces off the ground.
Counting your blessings, biding your time.
It's a rare glimpse of Jackson as father, a side not often seen in public.
Michael was an incredible father.
A blood for all. Not by myself, help me. Help.
He actually was one of the best fathers I'd ever seen. He would spend time with his children, he would talk to his children, he would spend time teaching his children.
Like this touching scene, teaching his little children how to dance the wiggle.
And it's one of those things that's so mundane and normal and like the type of thing I've done 100 times. It really hit home watching him do this. I really think he was trying super hard to be a good human being with essentially no playbook or roadmap from his childhood or what was modeled for him. Because the other component that I've seen with really wealthy people, Byron, is nobody's willing to be honest with you. People always have something to gain from telling you what you want to hear. And it's really rare that a person will put their benefit from their relationship with you at risk by being honest and potentially upsetting you. Between that and having just such a fucked up upbringing, I don't think he had any idea. He was trying to find his way through this path of adulthood that made no sense to him. I've read tons of accounts of how remarkably well-behaved and kind his kids were, especially compared to a lot of these other families that would hang out. Whether it was on airplane flights or even staff at Neverland, Michael's kids were really polite and kind and generous, and these other kids were running around, you know, in many cases being disrespectful and taking advantage of situations.
It's also not their fault.
No, 100% not.
No,
they all
the
had
real
really
victim-
fucked up parents.
Yeah.
Like, this is so clear. We will never know whether Michael Jackson was truly innocent or Michael Jackson was truly guilty. And a thing that you pointed out and a couple other people, because as you know, when I'm diving into these types of research pieces, I talk about it with everyone. And I've actually had a couple other people say exactly what you said, Byron, which is, doesn't really matter. He was weird. Like,
He was
clearly
being inappropriate.
It wasn't okay, right? And I have to agree with you, but I have to disagree with the idea doesn't matter. And one of the things that made that concept hit home was watching some recent social media post Paris Jackson, his only daughter, posted. The burden that his children carry because of the assumptions that were made about him, guilty or innocent, I don't think I could sleep at night if I didn't blatantly say he was not given a fair shake in the court of public opinion at all. I don't think that anything that is factually available points to him being guilty of child molestation. That doesn't mean he didn't do it, but I don't think anything that is available to the public and that is in any court of record gives even partial evidence of that.
Sure.
And it does matter because...
I guess the only thing that rubs me wrong about this whole situation is he had so many opportunities to adjust and correct his behavior, whether or not it was criminal or pedophilic. From 1993 to 2003, he could have changed the way he was looking at this.
Two things there, Byron. Part of that, I think, comes back to this idea that nobody's going to be honest with you when you are in that position. I've seen it in such weird ways. And I really do not think he understood at any level that this was wrong.
There was millions of people telling him that he was...
But there weren't. That's the thing. Okay, like think about it when somebody posts that I'm a libtard.
Sure.
In one of the comments, right? And there are lots of people that might post that. I'm not going to take that as evidence that I need to change my behavior because the people close to me that I trust
are reinforcing that behavior.
Right. Or when they put checks and balances on it, certainly aren't putting those extreme checks and balances on.
Sure.
And
there's
I
a
have
power
the benefit,
differential.
right? And I have the benefit of people being honest with me because I don't have some weird celebrity power position.
Sure.
Okay. I don't think there was anyone in his orbit being honest with him and telling him like, okay, no, you don't understand. Like you can't do this. I don't think he ever believed anything he was doing was wrong. And I think in terms of making an adjustment, in order to make an adjustment, you have to understand that there is a viable reason to make an adjustment. Yeah. He was able to double down on the narrative that he was doing nothing wrong.
In fact, he was doing something good.
He was doing something good because he was helping kids and he was caring about people and he was compassionate and he was trying to spread love and like...
Because he, as a kid, didn't
heal the world.
That love.
Like, look at the like childlike... super simplistic messages in his music.
Well, then the problem is that we cannot idolize people and put them in positions.
I hate to quote my husband because I think he's such an idiot about some things, but I think he's really right about this one thing. Well, maybe a couple things, but this is one of them.
Yeah.
This is why we should not idolize people. We should idolize ideas.
Good job, Sam.
There is no such thing as a human that's all good or all bad. But I think what this case has taught me more than anything is the importance of humanity and understanding very rarely are things black and white, if ever. And what you hear about someone, especially in a case like this, is quite often a teeny tiny representation of truth. And there's so much more going on behind the scenes. It's easy for us to sit at home and pass judgments, and nobody has time to research all major news stories to the degree that you and I have spent time researching this thing.
Mm-hmm. And we still really just scratch the surface. There is an extreme...
We could do this for 5 years.
We really could. Yeah. The archive is almost endless.
It's insane. But I have learned that before you become certain about something and pass unequivocal judgment against someone, condemn them for being a categorically evil human being, you probably want to make sure that what you're basing that on is actually rooted in fact. And holy shit, primary sources are important, everyone.
Be critical of the media that you're taking in, because...
Yeah, be critical of me, you know? Don't believe everything I say either. Keep humanity in it, for the love of God, because I don't think he was an evil person. I could be totally wrong. But I don't think that he did these things that he was accused of. And I think what he was guilty of was something in such a different category that had that been the transparent truth, it would have had a profoundly different impact on him, his children, his estate, his legacy, and things that matter a long time beyond his death. I mean, his kids are real people.
Well, yeah, I mean, Paris
with real
is
lives.
Opening for Incubus right now.
I'm so sorry, Paris.
Good luck with that.
I'm very sorry.
And also, who knows just how significantly this type of tabloid journalism, especially at that time, like how it influenced where we are now.
It's very scary to think about.
Yeah.
Please, any feedback, you guys, I really hope this wasn't super upsetting for any of you. And if it was, I really apologize. And I am really eager to hear what topics you would like me to challenge my beliefs about. Again, we are off limits for Holocaust denial, January 6th denial, and election denial. But otherwise, I'm kind of excited to do more of this, Byron.
This has been, it's been a lot.
It's been a lot. If you would have told me when we started this podcast, Byron, that one of my episodes would have been about the conspiracy against Michael Jackson.
And that you'd be arguing in favor
of him being wrongly accused. Yeah, I definitely would not have believed you. We might be in a parallel universe at this point. I don't know.
Let's end this broadcast.
Let's do. We probably should.
Signing off.
11 and you didn't sleep last night. So
nope. Sure didn't.
Probably should get some sleep tonight.
I'll do my best.
All right.
For Kelly, I'm Byron.
I'm Kelly.
We'll see you next time.
I had some great closing.
I know.
Sharp minds, open hearts.
Wonderful.
You've been listening to an Audio Wool original, produced by Byron McCoy, theme music provided by Cemeteries. For more programs like this, visit audiowool.co.